Investigators say meaningful leads, they've been hard to come by, even after the family offered that $1 million reward earlier this week.
Officers swarmed a property in a burst of activity that signaled the end of a long silence. Nancy Guthrie had been gone for far too long, and the clock was ticking. Then the FBI sat Tommaso Cioni down for an interrogation that would last for hours. The crazy part is, he started the meeting acting like a concerned family member. But here's the catch. The evidence didn't match his tears.
After midnight, Monday, February 1st, a masked, armed man approaches Nancy's door. Head down, he focuses in on the home's doorbell camera, then turns back to grab foliage in a clumsy attempt to cover the device.
Eventually, the walls closed in and he spoke the truth. That confession, now public, reveals a series of events that are hard to even process without feeling a sense of dread. Cold room truths. Federal agents spent years tracking the movements of everyone involved in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. For a long time, the case felt like it was going nowhere, with only whispers and theories filling the void.
They didn't have many updates. Nancy Guthrie, mom of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, remains missing after being kidnapped from her Tucson home over the weekend.
That changed when they finally sat Tommaso Cioni down in an interrogation room that was barely 10 feet by 12 feet, 3 meters by 3.5 meters. For starters, the atmosphere was thick with tension as agents played a slow game of cat and mouse. They knew that Tommaso, the son-in-law, held the keys to the mystery, but they needed him to turn them. See, the FBI had been gathering data for months, looking at cell phone pings and credit card swipes. They realized that Tommaso's phone had traveled nearly 15 miles, 24 kilometers away from his home on the day Nancy vanished. This was a key detail because he had originally told local police that he never left the house that afternoon. When the agents confronted him with this, his face went pale and he started to fidget with his shirt collar. It's not that simple though, because he didn't break right away. He tried to claim he was just out for a drive to clear his head, but the agents weren't buying it. They pushed harder, showing him photos of the area where his phone had been spotted. It was a wooded area near a lake, far from any main roads. And get this, the agents had found tire tracks that matched his vehicle perfectly. Tommaso started to sweat, even though the room was kept at a cool 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius. He knew he was caught in a lie, and that's putting it lightly. The interrogation went on for over 6 hours, with the agents refusing to give him an inch of breathing room. Basically, they were waiting for him to make one big mistake, where they talked about Nancy as if she were still around, asking him what she would think of him sitting there. This psychological pressure is a classic tactic, and it worked like a charm. Tommaso's voice began to crack as he realized his story about being a concerned son-in-law was falling apart. Nobody expected this to happen so quickly, but the weight of the evidence was just too much for him to carry. What most people don't realize is that the FBI had even more information that they hadn't even shown him yet. The pressure was reaching a boiling point, and everyone watching from behind the glass knew something was about to give. Tommaso asked for a glass of water, his hand shaking so much that he spilled half of it on the table. He looked at the camera in the corner of the room and then back at the agents. It was clear that the secret he had been keeping was eating him alive from the inside out. Could the truth about Nancy be hidden in the very words he was about to speak? The day Nancy Guthrie went missing started like any other Friday. She had plans to meet friends for lunch, but she never showed up. For hours, her family tried to reach her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. By 8 o'clock in the evening, the worry had turned into full-blown panic. This is where the story gets complicated because Tommaso was the last person to see her alive at her home. He claimed she was in good spirits and had simply mentioned going out for a few errands. But here's the catch. Her car was still in the driveway and her purse was sitting on the kitchen counter. People don't just walk away from their lives without their keys and money. For starters, the local police treated it as a missing person case, but the FBI was called in when they realized there were signs of a struggle in the hallway. There were scuff marks on the floor that indicated someone had been dragged nearly 6 feet, 2 meters, toward the back door. Tommaso tried to explain these marks away by saying he had been moving furniture earlier that week. See, he always had an answer for everything, but the answers never quite added up. Neighbors reported hearing a loud thud around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right when Tommaso claimed he was taking a nap. The distance between the houses was only about 50 feet, 15 meters, so sound traveled easily through the quiet neighborhood. A delivery driver caught a glimpse of Tommaso's car leaving the driveway at 2:30, driving much faster than the 25 miles per hour, 40 kilometers per hour speed limit. What most people don't realize is that these small details were the building blocks for the FBI's interrogation. They were slowly painting a picture of a man who was frantically trying to cover his tracks. So, here's the deal. The agents knew that if they could prove he was lying about the timeline, they could prove he was involved. They spent hours going over the same 10 minutes of the day, asking him to describe every single thing he did. Tommaso started to get frustrated, his stories becoming more elaborate and less believable. Hands down, he was the most suspicious person in the room, and he knew it. There are still many rumors on the air, but what many can confirm is that Nancy's disappearance was no accident. The tension in the interrogation room was a reflection of the tension in the entire town. Everyone wanted answers, and they wanted them now. The FBI was determined to get to the core of what happened on that Friday afternoon, no matter how long it took. Was there a witness hiding in the shadows that Tommaso didn't know about? Unspoken horror. The moment Tommaso finally broke wasn't a loud explosion, it was a quiet, defeated whisper. He leaned forward, resting his head in his hands, and admitted that things had gotten out of control. He told the agents that he and Nancy had been arguing about money and family secrets. For the first time, the disturbing part of the title became a reality. He described a situation where his anger took over, leading to an outcome that could never be undone. He didn't use the word, but he made it clear that Nancy had passed away in that house. The crazy part is how he described the aftermath. He claimed he panicked and spent the next 3 hours cleaning the house with industrial-strength chemicals. He used nearly 2 gallons, 7.5 liters of bleach to try and erase the evidence of what had happened. This is a key detail because the FBI had found trace amounts of those chemicals during their search, even though the house looked spotless. He didn't just stop at cleaning. He confessed to moving her body to a location nearly 20 miles, 32 kilometers away. He chose a spot that was so remote he thought nobody would ever find her. He talked about the drive in the middle of the night, staying off the main highways to avoid traffic cameras. He was calculating even in his state of panic, which made the confession even more unsettling for the agents to hear. What most people don't realize is that he had actually gone back to the site 2 days later to make sure everything was still hidden. He was obsessed with the idea of not getting caught. It's not that simple though, because his conscience was starting to fail him. He told the agents that he kept seeing Nancy's face every time he closed his eyes. This wasn't out of remorse necessarily, but out of fear of the consequences. Basically, he had turned into a shell of a man, or driven by the weight of his own actions. The agent sat in silence as he laid out the geography of the disposal site, marking an X on a map they provided. He gave them landmarks, like a specific oak tree and a rusted fence line that ran for about 100 yards, 91 meters. Would the physical evidence at the site match the horrors he just described? Following the map Tommaso drew, a team of over 30 investigators headed into the woods at dawn. And they had to hike for nearly 2 miles, 3 kilometers, through thick brush and uneven terrain. The air was damp and heavy, matching the mood of the search party. For starters, they used ground-penetrating radar to look for disturbances in the earth. They were looking for anything that didn't belong in the natural landscape. And get this, after 4 hours of searching, the radar picked up something significant. It was located about 3 feet, 1 meter below the surface. You're right where Tommaso said it would be. The team began the slow process of recovery, working with the precision of surgeons. They found items that belonged to Nancy, including a piece of jewelry she wore every day. This was the moment the investigation shifted from a missing person to a recovery mission. What most people don't realize is that Tommaso had tried to bury other evidence with her, thinking it would all just disappear together. They found a pair of work gloves and a small shovel that had his DNA on the handle.
The discovery of a pair of gloves found about a mile or so from Guthrie's home. They appear to be similar to the ones seen in the doorbell video. Investigators are testing them for DNA.
It was a mountain of evidence that made any defense almost impossible. Hands down, the FBI had built a case that was airtight. So here's the deal. While the team was in the woods, Tommaso was being processed at the station. He had stopped talking entirely, realizing the gravity of what he had done. See, he had hoped that by confessing, he might get a lighter sentence, but the nature of the crime made that unlikely. The community was in shock as news of the discovery leaked out. Nancy was a beloved grandmother and friend, and the idea that her own son-in-law could do this was too much for many to handle. The recovery took nearly 12 hours because they wanted to ensure every single piece of evidence was documented. They found that the area had been disturbed recently, confirming Tommaso's story about returning to the site. Everything he had said in that cold interrogation room was proving to be the truth, as disturbing as it was. Is it possible that Tommaso had help during those dark hours of the night? Justice served. In the end, the interrogation tapes provided by the FBI served as the final nail in the coffin for Tommaso Cioni's defense. He was charged with multiple felonies, including the act of taking a life and tampering with evidence. The trial was short because the evidence was so overwhelming. And nobody expected this to happen when the search first began, but the truth always has a way of coming to light. But here's the catch. Even with a conviction, the family is still left with a hole that can never be filled. They have to live with the knowledge that the person they trusted was the one who caused the most harm. It's not that simple to move on from something so traumatic. The Guthrie family has asked for privacy as they try to navigate their new reality. What most people don't realize is how much this case has changed the way the local police handle disappearances. They are now more aggressive in the first 48 hours, knowing how quickly a trail can go cold. Basically, Nancy's legacy is now tied to a shift in how justice is sought for the missing. There are still many rumors on the air about Tommaso's motives, but the core truth remains. He made a choice that destroyed multiple lives. The FBI's release of the tapes was a way to show the public the reality of the investigation and the importance of every single piece of evidence. See, justice isn't just about a jail cell. It's about the truth being known. As we look back on this case, we have to wonder if there were warning signs that everyone missed. Could this have been prevented if someone had spoken up sooner? The thing is, we might never have all the answers. But we have enough to know that Nancy Guthrie will not be forgotten. Do you think the justice system did enough for Nancy's family in this case? What would you do if you discovered someone close to you was hiding a secret this dark? Make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into true crime.